Hey guys, Pedro here to tell you about the latest from Carach Angren, The Cult of Kariba, out October 17th on Season of Mist. This EP has 5 tracks, 21 minutes in length, and it's the band's second EP. They are a Dutch symphonic black metal band. Now this is a concept release, nothing new for the band, one that brings in historical legends, folklore stories, and a lot of creative freedom in order to make them a little bit more embellished, in order to make them a little bit more exciting, a little bit more attractive, if you will. So I like this concept, I like this idea. It ties in well with the DNA of the band, with what they do best, which is tell stories, horror stories, and this one is no different. So it's an interesting concept, one that becomes a short story because it's an EP and it has 5 songs with 21 minutes. But just because it's short, it doesn't mean it's not impactful, it doesn't mean it's not entertaining, it doesn't mean it's not engaging, because it's exactly all the above. They create a very dynamic fluidity, a lot of dynamic fluidity throughout these 5 songs, and the EP starts off with the Malevolent 4 Stirs, which is just an opening track with a narrator, but I feel like it's really important because it sets the story, it sets the concept, and allows the listener from the get-go to know exactly where you are and perhaps where you're heading. And where you're heading next is to Draw Blood, the second song on this EP. Now this is a very traditional Carach Angren song, perhaps one of the most traditional Carach Angren sounding songs on this release. It has a dark atmosphere to it, it's sinister all the time throughout, you just feel it. It has a somber nature to it, and the blend of black and symphonic elements really bring a cinematic theatrical essence to the forefront, which is the case with Carach Angren. That is part of their DNA, and that's why I say that this song really goes back to the roots. It allows that symphonic blackened sound, storytelling, somber approach to be the main essences of the entire track. It's a big sounding song. It really feels like a big song all around. The volume really expands, and the vocals are extremely important because this is the first steps outside of the narrator, the first steps into the story. So the vocals are really important in order to guide the listener and bring the listener in. And I really felt the vocal performance on this track was on point as far as what it gives the song, but also as far as what the story is all about. Then you have the Resurrection of Kariba. Now this is a very dynamic song, specifically on the vocal side, and that's an important aspect because it ties into that moment within the story of this record. Now this track really picks up a lot of elements from Draw Blood, but it turns them all the way to 11. So there's a lot of similarities between the two tracks, but this track is way more dynamic, at least on the vocal side. On the musical side, it's definitely emphasizing a lot of those darker elements that we saw in Draw Blood. They're still there, but a lot more emphasis is put on them on this song. It makes the track feel even darker, even more sinister, even more menacing. And I love that because you start to see an escalation from track to track. Then comes Ik kom uit het graf. This is the only track on this release that has lyrics and vocals, obviously, in Dutch. Now this track changes the dynamics a little bit because it feels a lot more industrial. It doesn't feel as throwback as the 2 previous songs. It has a little bit more of a new Carach Angren sound to it. But in the context, and this is really interesting because listen to this song as a single, it didn't sound as good, it didn't feel as good as it does in the overall concept and where it comes in as far as the track listing is concerned. Creating this song and giving this song that more industrial experience adds to the momentum of this EP, and it makes the track stand out in a very different way. Now you're it's almost moving this song into like a Frankenstein style experience, but that plays really well with where you are within the story and where things are heading. So I like this track a lot more in the concept of the record itself than I did as a single. It's different, yes, it has more industrial elements, it's a little bit more separated from the DNA of the band, and it sounds completely different from everything that came before, and definitely from the track that comes last, which is Venomous 1666. Now, this track has a little bit more emphasis on the guitar sound. And I think it's, while the guitar sound on this track is not predominantly the driving force from beginning to end, you could definitely hear it a little bit better. The guitars breathe a little bit better on this song, and that allows the track to feel different from the predecessors. The two songs that came closer together is definitely Draw Blood and the Resurrection of Kariba. Everything after that is very unique, and it really shifts the attention of the listener to different elements. This one shifted my interest to the overall guitar sound, which I thought was really good. Still a very cinematic, symphonic driven song with a lot of darkness attached to it, a track that builds a little bit closer, that feels built a little bit closer, not as open as some of the previous songs were, but a song that feels like it's growing towards a climax, and at the same time that it grows towards the climax of closing off the record, it also feels like it draws you towards a climax that ends on a cliffhanger. That is a really interesting aspect, because you're building the closing song of this concept in a way that it closes it off, but it also leaves a lot of questions unanswered. So if the band wants to go back to this story at some point in time, they could totally do that, because I don't feel like we're getting a true end to where this story needs to go. So a very interesting aspect, not just from a lyrical standpoint, but also from an overall sonic perspective as far as what Venomous 1666 puts forward. This is it, Carach Angren with the Cult of Kariba, once again out October 17 on Season of Mist. Hit me up in the comment section, let me know your thoughts. I'll see you all at the next one. Take care, guys.